In this video, I will show you how to use EstimatorXpress and the standard quote templates that it contains within that allows you to quickly and easily create estimates for your clients. One of the main things to do before you start any job is to ensure that the pricing that you are using is completely up to date. To do this within software, it is very easy and very straightforward. You simply go to the library option here on the left. Click on the arrow beside Pricebooks and then click on Master Pricebook. This will bring up EstimatorXpress's main Master Pricebook list. As you can see, in this section, once we've clicked through into the Master Pricebook, it gives us the option to choose which Pricebook to open. As you can see, we have materials, labour, plant, subcontract and sundry item. I'll open the material Pricebook as an example. It'll take a couple of moments for it to do so, and there we have it. This is where the software stores all of the prices for all of its materials, as you may imagine. If we'd like to adjust any of them, it's simply a case of going to the item you would like to adjust, clicking on the heading, clicking on Edit Resource, and adjusting the price as you see fit. So if the price has increased to £67, for example, I simply key in 67, click on OK, and that is then saved into the software for future use. And of course, this applies to the labour element of the software as well. It's simply a case of clicking through on the labour, clicking through on the item you'd like to adjust, clicking on Edit Resource, and keying in the figure that is required. Simple and as straightforward as that. We've now adjusted the prices and established how it is done. So without further ado, I'll move across to how to actually begin the estimating process itself. To go back to the main screen, we simply go to Dashboard, and a couple of seconds later, we have the main screen. Now that we've ensured that the prices are all up to date, we can begin the actual estimate. To do this, we click on Create New Job. This will bring up the Quote Wizard template, and it allows us to select the different types of options, the different types of quote that the software can do for us. We can quote from a job template. In plain English, this means that the software comes with a predefined list of different types of jobs, so different types of extensions, new builds, you name it, and it automatically suggests the estimating templates that you may need to do those types of jobs. It will suggest various types of walls, roofing, again, you name it. The next option is Quote from Plans Express, and that will allow you to import plans, as the name suggests, from Plans Express software. Finally, we have Quote using estimating calculators. And essentially this option allows you to individually choose the estimating calculators that the software has built in to build up the quote that you'd like to create. There's over 300 estimating calculators that the software has built in, and this is probably an option used more by the more experienced user of EstimatorXpress. For today, I'm going to select Quote from Job Template. So click on that, and a couple of moments later, the wizard will pop up. And this wizard, as it suggests and as it shows, the different types of jobs that the software allows you to do. Today I will do an extension, but as you can see, you can do loft conversions, garage conversions, renovations, extensions, brand new houses, bungalows, garages, garage extensions, and full customized builds. As I say though, today we will be going with an extension. If I click on extension, up will pop the next screen, and this screen here allows us to select the various types of extensions that you may be asked to do by your clients. As you can see, if there's an option that you need, you'll find it here. Essentially, this template library here gives you a complete list of all the different types of extensions that you may be asked to do by your clients. The software will also allow you to select the wall finish, and that allows the software to automatically select all the relevant options for that type of finish. So when you're estimating with that finish, it's using all the correct items that you may need for that type of job. So today I'll go with a Apex Roof single story extension. Simply by clicking on it, and up will pop the next screen. And this is the details for the job itself. On this new screen that has appeared, it allows us to give the job a name, give it a reference, tell us also what price book to use, set up the build program, and also set up any specifications that the software is using, so it will automatically default to the materials, labour, plant, and so on for that particular type of job. So to begin with, I will give the job a name. Obviously it's a reference to your client. In this particular instance, I'm going to call it a job for Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith's extension. Of course, you can call it obviously whatever is relevant to you and to your client at hand. It is a single story extension, so I'll leave that as correct. And it is the 10th job done on the system here, so the reference is correct. Of course, you can give reference as you see fit, as relevant to your business there. We're going to be using the master price book the software has built in. In fact, it's the price book we looked at earlier on in this demonstration, this instructional video of how to use the software. So we're going to use the master price book. That master price book obviously contains all the materials, the labour, plant, subcontract, and sundry items as you need. We then select the details for the build program, the Gantt chart. So we're going to select a start date for the job, so whenever it may be. So perhaps if we do it early next year, maybe starting in early March 2026. And we're going to allow the software to automatically calculate the build program type. We'll then select the relevant specification. Now I'm going to go with the extension specification here. So that's the most relevant to the job that we're doing here. But as you can see, there's various options for new builds, renovations, and indeed timber frame specifications as well. And next we have the mini specs, and this allows us to adjust any particularly pertinent items that are often particularly important to the job itself and the overall costing. So for example, the tiling is always an area that obviously comes into its own. Obviously it's an expensive part of the job, so it's key to get it right. And of course the same applies to external brickwork, for example, allows you to adjust the brickwork quickly and easily. So the moment we key in dimensions, we're very quickly getting a very good idea of what the cost of the job will be. Finally, we have the mini specs, and this allows us to adjust some of the more pertinent items for the job quickly and easily. Once we're happy with all those details, we can go to Review Profit Markup, and this allows us to, as the name suggests, adjust the profit markup for the job. And that obviously allows for the overheads and the overall profit markup as well there. We then have Review Inflation Rates, and again this allows us to allow for inflation in the job cost. Whilst it may not matter in a job that's going to take a month or two, if you're quoting for a job that is in 12-18 months down the line, you want the software to automatically calculate in a cost reflecting the cost of inflation on the job. For example, if you've got a job that costs 100,000, and you're doing it 12 months down the line and inflation is approximately 5%, the job in a year's time will cost approximately 105,000. If you quote it at 100, you'll be losing 5,000. Once we're happy with that, we hit close and create job. Software will then pull all the estimating calculators together for us that is needed, and it will then allow us to start keying in the dimension figures to cost out the job. As you can see, once the software has brought all the information together for us, it will then ask you what aspects you'd like to consider for your job at hand. So we will allow for site establishment, if there's any topsoil that needs to be moved, site strip, scaffolding to be included, and so on. So essentially this screen here is allowing you to set up the start of the job, where the basic costs of establishing the site begin. So once you're happy with all the selections that you've made, actually, as I say, for site establishment, clearing the site, scaffolding, you name it, once we're happy, we hit select, and it will present us with this screen here to enter the dimensions for the extension. So obviously we've got the depth to the extension and the width to the extension here. So perhaps the extension is 4.5 meters, 4.5 meters deep, and perhaps in a moment, once it's actually taken that in, and it's 6 meters wide. The software will then automatically calculate all the costs accruing and needed for the job. And this is because the software understands how to build. The software automatically allows for the plastering and the decoration to be completed. It also allows for finishing to the external walls, and it can allow for you to decorate the fascias and soffits, also depending if they're PVC or wood. And essentially the software is set up out of the box where the standard figures that you would imagine for foundations and footings and so on are automatically added into the job, into the software, and therefore costing automatically for you. However, you do have the ability to adjust any of the dimensions, any of the any costs, and anything that's used in the job there. And to do that, we simply go to DIMS, and it will pull up the dimension wizard screen. And this dimension wizard screen will allow us to adjust any of the specifications in terms of what materials are being used, but of course the dimensions as well. So we can confirm the height of the wall, the length of the wall, if there's a number of identical walls that you'd like to consider, obviously the depth of the floor zone, and so on. We can obviously allow for any openings into the wall, the gable end to the extension, and all of the absolute dimensions that are applicable. We can confirm the details on the parapet. Of course, the details on the foundation, so if any of the details that are required here are non-standard or specific to this job that you're working on, you can simply key it into the box as will be required, as needed. It's very simple, straightforward to update. Of course, we can confirm the footings there as well. So as you can see, the software is set up in a way that is designed to speed up the estimating process using over 25 years worth of experience in the building and estimating software market. So we've now adjusted for the wall there, so that's now adjusted in, and as you can see here, the cost moves up as we go through the estimate here and we confirm the details. Obviously it's allowed for slabbing by default, and it's given quite one big thickness of slab there. But once again, all I need to do is go to the dimensions wizard here, and we can adjust any details that we need. So the software has allowed for just under 24 square meters of slabbing there, and that obviously the sound binding and sub base are all put in as they should be there, and of course we can confirm the details on the slab itself. So if there is of course a damp-proof membrane, the overlap you'd like for the perimeter of the slab, if it's insulated, and the length of the perimeter to the insulation where relevant, and if it's reinforced to the top or the bottom of the slab. And finally, allowing for a bit of your experience, because often the software doesn't directly know what ground you're working onto, the hours required and the days required for the plant that will be needed to lay the slabbing there. And once we're happy there, we simply hit finish, and that is the flooring done. And we can mark each area that we've completed as completed simply by clicking on the tick box there. We can then move on to the roofing section here, and to do that we can select the type of roof from the options there from the specification. I'll go with a cut roof here, and obviously the internal finishes we can select as well, so what type of finish we're having as it suggests to the internal finishes there. Again, I can go to the dimension wizard here, and up will pop the dimension wizard, and this will allow us to adjust any figures that we'd like to adjust away from the standard figures. But bear in mind, software is intelligent. It does know how to build all the different types of roofing that you will potentially encounter. What the software is allowing you to do here is to make any adjustments that you would like to do if you require. Again, I'll click on the Tech Tips and Tech Labels box here to actually add tips and label the diagram up here. You may notice as you click through in the top right hand corner here, it's giving you the information that it's asking for. It specifically tells you what is required in each of the boxes as you click through. So we confirm our details on the extension here. But once again, as I say, because we've previously keyed in the dimensions, the length and the depth of the extension, the software knows exactly what is required to actually build the roof, the apex roof, onto the extension there. So we confirm all our details here as required. We confirm the each length there, the wall thickness, breather end of the soffit there as well. We can confirm how it's tiled, insulated, and finished to the roof. Again, asking simple, straightforward questions. So, is the inside of the rafters plastered? Is it decorated? Is the ceiling plastered and decorated? Are you going to prime and decorate the soffits and so on? So essentially the software is set up to make the estimating process one that is quickly and easily completed. So I hit finish, and I mark the roof as complete. Now I could of course keep going on and on in terms of how to use the estimating calculators the software has built in, but as you'd imagine, the process is simply a case of confirming the dimensions and adjusting them as you see fit. So once we're happy with all the estimating calculators and what we've done there, what we can now do is confirm a few more details for the quote itself. So if there's any assumptions or omissions that you would like to include, we simply click on the Assumptions and Omissions tab here on the top, and we can add that information in. The software also allows for any provisional sums that you may need to include for the job. So for example, if the client has a specialist kitchen install and it's been quoted at approximately £5,000, we can add that in to the software so it appears on the quote as a provisional obviously sum there. So that is allowed within software, and this is a key feature for any prices that you don't know the exact pricing but need to indicate on the job on the quote at hand. Of course, you then have the client contact details. So if we click through there, we can enter in the customer's name. Oh, if I spell that correctly, so Mr. Smith perhaps. And software remembers the information you previously entered. So previously we've had a Mr. Smith, so I'll use Mr. Smith's details there. So I'll say yes. I'll select his details. If there's a list, there'll be a drop down list there, but there we go. And because it's an extension, it's going to be the same site details. So I'll select yes as well, just Mr. Smith. He's living on a road in a town somewhere. There we go. So we now have Mr. Smith's details saved to the job at hand. The software also has a jump to section, so it allows you to jump between the estimating calculators quickly and easily. So rather than having to scroll, you can also just click on the down arrow here next to the jump to section and select the area that we would like to consider at hand. So for example, if we wanted to look back at perhaps the roof once more, I'd simply click roof and it'll jump us down to the roof section. I've marked it as completed incidentally, so it's compressed the item there. If I untick it, it will make it available again for us to see. And essentially, to complete the quote itself, it's simply a case of scrolling through the list of the estimating calculators and making any adjustments to them as you see fit. The key aspect to remember, however, is the software is set up in an intelligent way, in the fact that it knows how to build. It uses industry standard figures and dimensions so that it does the work and you don't have to. Once you are happy with all the calculations, all the figures that you've entered for the dimension wizards, we can then go to build the build program for the job at hand. And to do this, I click on the build program here on the left. The software itself has an inbuilt error check tool that notes any of the estimating calculators that you haven't entered dimensions into that may be of use, and it will also pop up the screen to remind you to review them if that's required. So in terms of the build program, we can obviously confirm all the labourers being used for each of the sections here. If you want to make any adjustments, we can simply grab the relevant worker there, and we do that by simply clicking on the down arrow beside the relevant section and select obviously the relevant worker that you would like, or workers that you would like to use. So we confirm all the details to each of the sections there. I'm assuming we're happy. We hit finish, and the software has now created the Gantt chart or the extension here. And one of the main benefits of obviously this build program here itself, this Gantt chart, is it will help develop the order schedules for the materials and indeed labour at hand for the job. Now that we've completed the build program, also the Gantt chart for the job at hand, we can then look to complete the quote for the client. And to do that, we go onto the left-hand side here, the quote and outputs, and then the written documents, and we select quote for main estimate. The software will then have a little think for a moment, and it will pull all the details that we've entered in to the job across here into the quote. We can, of course, then look through the quote here that is produced and make any adjustments using the tools here on the right hand side. To be able to view this quote a little bit better, I'm going to zoom out, and to do that I'll use the zoom out tool here, so clicking on zoom out so the page itself is a little smaller there. So I've zoomed out a little simply so we can view the quote itself without being zoomed in too closely as it was initially there. So there we have the main page, the main cover page here. And bear in mind, everything that I am now doing here allows you to adjust how the quote appears, and then in future quotes that you do, the software will then remember this information and the quote will appear in the same manner, meaning that you have a very professional and consistent look through your quotes and quotations that you do for your clients. So obviously that is the first page, this is the cover page. Of course, if you'd like to make any adjustments, we'd simply go to main settings here, and we can then make those adjustments. We can of course tell the software what content to include on the quote. I'm going to include it all because obviously we want it to have it as complete as possible. So we can have a cover page, a letter thanking the client for their request for a quotation, whether to include assumptions and omissions, provisional sums, to include a summary breakdown, and acceptance form, and of course terms and conditions. Naturally, I'm going to show you this all now, but simply at this point, if you wanted to remove any of those particular options, it will be done on this screen. So I'm going to scroll down here, just using the mouse wheel, and we can then see we've got the letter thanking the client for their quotation request. Once again, this information, this letter can be adjusted as we see fit. We have this little box here in the top right hand corner, and we can key in that information there, or indeed import a document from Word, and that will take those details and drop it into the EstimatorXpress there. And I'll continue to scroll down here. You can see obviously it's included any assumptions and omissions that we had specified. And if you remember earlier on, we noted that the gardening and landscaping defaults that are included, and obviously any omissions that are to be included for a job there as well. So for example, in this instance, it's been stated that there are no additional plans to be included with the extension work that's being done. It's simply the extension. I then can scroll down a little further still, and then it's allowed for the provisional sum. I don't know if you remember, also we noted there was a specialist kitchen install and the cost was £5,000. The software has now included that into the job as a provisional sum, so the client can see it is provisional, but is there nonetheless, the job at hand. I continue to scroll down further still, and then the job, then the software, I should say, then details the information, the quote at hand. And it's taken that information all automatically from the dimensions that we keyed in earlier on during this video. In terms of how it appears, any of the text, the font, anything can be adjusted here. And to do that, we simply go to main settings, and we can obviously then select the font style that's being used here, obviously its size, its style, its color, you name it. We can of course adjust in terms of any VAT that occur on the job, simply by selecting the relevant amount, whether it's a percentage, whether it's fixed, or for those of you that are not VAT registered, you can put it as a input only, which means obviously the VAT is added on the top, so it doesn't become a cost to yourself. In terms of ultimately any of the details on foundations, we can simply click on foundations here, and that will allow you to show or remove any of the details that appear on the quote here itself. And of course, this paragraph text here, it can be adjusted for you, obviously for the jobs that you do, and it can then be saved for future use. You can also, once again, import any descriptions that you may have written elsewhere, and again, that will be saved into the software. Now, of course, I could continue scrolling down and down and down through all the various areas, obviously for the roofing, the slabbing, you name it, but the principle obviously itself remains the same there. So if I scroll a little quickly through the job, obviously you can see from that small amount of information that we keyed in earlier during this video here today, it has actually been able to cost the entire job for you. Bear in mind, it can do this for you as the software is designed, it knows how to build. Of course, any of the options that it automatically has selected can be adjusted as you see fit. Obviously, it's not set in stone. But because the software uses these typically used methods for building in the UK, it's automatically has estimated an entire single-story extension for us in a matter of minutes here, really. So, there we obviously have the summary here for the job here at hand, and of course the materials summary there as well in terms of what's it got in terms of materials, the labour summary there as well, of course the plant summary, and of course the sundry summary as well. And as we continue to scroll down, you'll see then there are two copies of the acceptance of the estimate. There's one obviously for your client and one for yourself. Of course, they're both signed off and agreed for the job at hand. And finally, the last section, of course, is your terms and conditions. I've dropped in some example terms and conditions here just to have some data there, but of course you would need to include your own terms and conditions for your own business there at hand. Of course, we do sell a piece of software called Contract Expert, and that can actually create the contract for the jobs that you may do as well. So if you were to speak to one of these sales staff, they will be more than happy to help you on that side of things. Finally, the software can produce reports that allow you to order your materials in a timely manner. And to do that, all we need to do is go to the Smart Scheduler here. It'll take a couple of moments for it to appear. So software has a quick little thing here for us. So once we're happy with the job there, we've clicked through, and we can now select the material order report. And what the software does from the build program, from the Gantt chart, it automatically builds up a list of all materials that are needed and when you need to order them and when they're required on site, and even the total order quantity that is required. This applies to all materials, labour, plant, subcontract and sundry items. Essentially, the software is set up to automatically and intelligently help you order your materials, organise your labour, and of course your plant, and have any sundry items, basically anything you need on site at the correct time. And the software using the Gantt chart will enable you to do that. And that concludes the video on estimating using a standard quote template. I hope you found the video useful, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Take care.